Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Matt O'Connell here at Spoken Truth Revolution. I really appreciate you joining and watching us today. If you haven't liked us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, make sure you like us, follow us, and share our content. Really appreciate being in the battle with you and promoting truth and understanding our culture and where we go from here from a Christian perspective. So I have a couple of updates today. Update number one, you see this microphone? Yeah, I got it for Father's Day. Pretty cool, huh? My wife and kids got it for me and let me open the gift a little early so I can have a little fun with it during the podcast before we head out of town. We're heading up to New England to visit some family, so really excited. Hopefully it is pretty good quality. We'll see after this video is shot here. And so a couple headlines. We have an update between Daily Wire's Matt Walsh and AOC's feud on her abuela's home in Puerto Rico. We talked about this a little bit last week. We do have a couple updates. And also the U.S. Department of Justice were able to retrieve about $2.3 million in Bitcoin that was hacked by the dark side hackers who hacked into the Colonial Pipeline, which was that oil pipeline that affected most of the East Coast states. I think it was a couple weeks ago or so. I think they actually had to pay a ransom. Colonial Pipeline had to pay a ransom around $5 million, and the DOJ was able to retrieve $2.3 million in Bitcoin. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then also, we'll spend a little bit of time on the transgender movement and how we, as people who are conservatives, people who are Christian, who believe in God, how we should approach the transgender movement situation, as it seems like it's coming in from all sides, as you probably have guessed. It's in our school systems. It's on Blue's Clues, as we talked about last week. It's in Target. When you walk into Target, there's billboards in Walmart of gay pride, transgender pride, rainbow things and everything like that. What I do know is the rainbow that is God's promise to us for Noah, that he would never flood the earth. That I want to reclaim that rainbow. But needless to say, it's coming in from all sides, and it's trying, and the left is trying to indoctrinate us, especially our children, as it relates to accepting this. And if we don't accept it, we are labeled as bigots and hateful and whatnot. So we need to learn what it is and how to dialogue it as well, and also stand on truth and understand that what is inside you and me from a moral standpoint is correct, and we can believe that, and we can disagree with them, and we can still love them as well. But needless to say, that's the agenda for today. So the first thing, we're going to talk about AOC and Matt Walsh. So as you may recall, just as a quick recap, AOC posted on Twitter regarding her abuela's home last week, I believe it was, and she wrote, just over a week ago, my abuela fell ill. I went to Puerto Rico to see her, my first time in a year because of COVID, and this is her home. So she posted a couple pictures of her abuela's home, some roof damage, certainly some damage, and it was a result of Hurricane Maria, as you may recall. And she also blamed Trump. She said Trump blocked relief money for Puerto Rico. But I recall, because I wasn't born yesterday, I recall President Trump actually sending aid, sending supplies, sending water, sending food, sending resources over to Puerto Rico. And I also recall that there was a lot of corruption in the local governments within Puerto Rico. They were actually not distributing the food or water. And I remember seeing, airports with pallets and pallets and pallets of water that was not distributed, and food that ended up rotting. And so I do remember that as well. But I do remember that there was a lot of infrastructure issues as a result of Hurricane Maria. But as an update, and just as furthering the recap, so Matt Walsh, reads that post, and Matt Walsh, so as you know, AOC is left-leaning, Matt Walsh is conservative, right-leaning, and so you have two perspectives. AOC finds a situation that is in which her abuela is in dire straits, and she blames Trump. She blames the government. She blames the system. And this is kind of the MO of the left. If there's a problem in society within a group, it's not their fault. It's not their responsibility. It's the system's fault and the system's responsibility to fix it. And so Matt Walsh steps in and he comments, just commenting about the fact that AOC, you make six figures, you have a Tesla car payment lease that's about $500. You live in a really nice apartment in New York. Why don't you help your own abuela out and maybe skip a couple Tesla payments and whatnot? So um, he went even further than that. It became national news. He started a GoFundMe, as we talked about last week, for AOC's abuela. And at the time when we were talking about it last week, I think Matt Walsh's GoFundMe raised about $20,000, which blew my mind. I mean, that's just it's kind of funny. It's kind of savage as well. But as of I think this past weekend, they raised upward to I think a little over $100,000 in this GoFundMe account, and just amazing. I mean, it's just beautiful where you have two clearly very different ideologies. Matt Walsh, right? AOC left. AOC blames the system. Matt Walsh, and this is what the right primarily believes in. You find a situation, a difficult problem, and you do what you can to fix it. You do what you can to fix it, and that's exactly what Matt Walsh attempted to do. And unfortunately, AOC or somebody, not AOC specifically, so don't fact check me, but someone, whether it was AOC or a family or whatnot, rejected the GoFundMe funds. So all the funds, $100,000 worth have to be returned to the donors. So unfortunately, that's the end of that story. But it's still a really cool story of charity. It really is. And perhaps Matt was, in a way, kind of testing AOC, mocking her a little bit. But it was really intended to go towards Abuela, and unfortunately, that's not going to her, unfortunately. But just again, a cool picture where you have one person taking the problem, stepping up in the responsibility, and you have another person blaming someone else for the problem. And again, I think what God wants us to do is to have strong men and women to step up into responsibility and take action, not waiting on anybody else, not waiting on the government or blaming the government or blaming your past or blaming anybody else. But we see a problem, we accept it for what it is, and we just move forward in that. So the next article we're going to read about, headlining, and this is from Reuters. This is U.S. seizes $2.3 million in Bitcoin paid to Colonial Pipeline hackers. So as a recap, this was the oil pipeline that was hacked a couple weeks ago. It caused a lot of supply issues for the East Coast states. So there were, a lot of gas stations without gas, and the prices skyrocketed a little bit. I think I remember seeing images of $5 per gallon, $6 per gallon, and whatnot. So I'll just read it from this article. The Justice Department on Monday said it recovered some $2.3 million in cryptocurrency ransom paid by Colonial Pipeline Corporation, cracking down on hackers who launched the most disruptive U.S. cyber attack on record. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, said investigators had seized 63.7 bitcoins, now valued at about $2.3 million, paid by Colonial, after last month's hack of its systems that led to a massive shortages at U.S. East Coast gas stations. The Justice Department has, in quotes, found and recaptured the majority of the ransom paid by Colonial, Monaco said. An affidavit filed on Monday said the FBI was in possession of a private key to unlock the hacker's Bitcoin wallet. It was unclear how the FBI gained access to this key. A judge in San Francisco approved the seizure of funds from this cryptocurrency address, which the filing said was located in the Northern District of California. That's pretty interesting. Colonial Pipeline had said it paid the hackers nearly $5 million to regain access. Bitcoin's value had dropped in recent weeks, trading at around $36,000 on Monday after hitting $63,000 in April. Today, we've turned the tables on DarkSide, said Monaco, referring to a ransomware group widely believed to have been behind the crippling fuel pipeline attack. The hack caused a shutdown lasting several days, leading to a spike in gas prices, panic buying, and localized fuel shortages. So I remember seeing, oh my gosh, you probably seen a lot of the memes and whatnot, people filling up gas in plastic bags and laundry baskets and the back of truck beds with a tarp inside of it so it didn't leak out. just craziness, and it's just a lot of fear, just a lot of uncertainty floating around in our society, right? It's unreal. But I talked about this story, and specifically, it was in relation to a press conference last week held by Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, and her response to one of the reporters, I think it was Ducey from Fox News, was questioning what the White House was planning to do to help in this situation, Colonial Pipeline and other hacking attacks on private sectors. And Psaki's comment, I'm going to paraphrase, was, "Well, it's a private sector issue, so let them handle it." But I think this is really a good move I would say, by the federal government to have stepped in and to help these companies, because again, we have to make sure we understand that even though it is technically a private sector company, and perhaps we could argue it's a private sector issue, I mean, this is dealing with American companies. This is dealing with companies that put value into the American economy, infrastructure, etc. So if all of these hackers are infiltrating our private sector, it's essentially going to affect all of our citizens, right? I mean, it's going to, if hacking and ransomware attacks continue, it's going to increase the cost of goods, in which we're going to have to pay out for these ransomware attacks. So I think it was a bad comment by Psaki, and somewhat apathetic in to say the least. But I think this is, I suppose, a good move by the Biden administration and the Justice Department to move forward, even though they only obtained a little less than half of what the ransom was. So the ransom was for $5 million. The Justice Department was able to retrieve $2.3 million. So I mean, it's better than nothing. But I think this is the U.S. needs to get more proactive versus reactive in these situations. But again, I think it is a good move, and we should give credit where credit's due. Where the Biden administration, in this case, the Justice Department, did the right thing here. But again, I think Psaki and the Biden administration, they need to, and probably they are, and hopefully they come out with some new news, but they need to get more proactive in these situations, so that, again, at the end of the day, if these continue to happen, it's only going to increase costs for the consumers, you and me. And so we just have to, again, think of this logically, objectively, give credit where credit's due, but also provide a commentary on how the Biden administration should perhaps move forward in protecting private sector companies.